She believed she was safe in that quiet house, far from everything that had hurt her. But when she fell into her master's arms, she felt a desire she had never known how to name. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave your comment saying where you're listening from. The rain fell heavily on the roof of the Barrett estate when Emily climbed the stone steps leading to the main entrance for the first time. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the small worn leather suitcase, the only inheritance from a childhood she preferred to forget. At 28, she carried on her shoulders the weight of an entire life spent in foster homes, where she learned early that being invisible was safer than being noticed. The wrought iron gate creaked when she pushed it, and the sound echoed across the property like an ancient lament. The mansion rose before her like a fortress of dark stones, surrounded by dense woods and a rusted fence that seemed more like a prison than protection. Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. This would be her refuge, she thought. A place where no one would see her, where her solitude would be just another shadow among many. The main door opened before she even rang the bell. A tall man with broad shoulders and dark hair slightly graying at the temples appeared in the doorway. Emily felt her heart involuntarily quicken. Nathan Barrett was different from what she had imagined. There was nothing fragile or melancholic about his presence. On the contrary, he radiated a contained, almost predatory strength that made her instinctively take a step back. "You must be Emily," he said, and his voice was deep with a timbre that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Come in." She followed him through the wide corridors, her steps muffled by the Persian carpet covering the marble floor. The house was even more imposing inside. Ancestral paintings hung from the high walls, portraits of serious-faced men and women who seemed to observe her with disapproval. The air carried the smell of old wood, beeswax, and something more indefinable, perhaps the aroma of suspended time. "The rules are simple," Nathan said without looking back, his long strides forcing Emily to quicken her pace to keep up. "You'll take care of the general cleaning, meals, and organization of the house. The first floor is your territory. The second floor is mine. There's no need to go up there except in specific situations that I will communicate." Emily nodded silently, observing the muscles in his back moving beneath his well-fitted white shirt. There was something disturbingly magnetic about his gestures, in the way he commanded the space around him. She had heard the rumors in town. Some said he was gay. Others swore he had lost the great passion of his life and never recovered. Looking at him now, Emily couldn't imagine a man like this being indifferent to desire. "Your room is in the east wing," he continued, stopping in front of a dark wooden door. "It has its own bathroom and a small sitting area. Your meals can be taken in the main kitchen or brought to your quarters as you prefer." When he finally turned to face her, Emily felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. Nathan's eyes were an intense green, almost golden, and the way he studied her made every cell in her body awaken to an uncomfortable awareness. It was as if he could see through her carefully constructed defenses, through the armor of indifference she used to protect herself from the world. "Any questions?" he asked, and Emily realized she had been silent for too long. "No, sir," she murmured, lowering her gaze. But even so, she could feel the weight of his gaze upon her, like a physical pressure that made her want to both flee and draw closer at the same time. "Nathan," he corrected, "we're not formal here." She dared to look up again and saw something that disconcerted her. A spark of genuine interest, perhaps even vulnerability, quickly crossing his face before disappearing behind the mask of control. "Nathan," she repeated, and the name left her lips like an involuntary caress. There was a moment of tense silence, charged with an electricity that Emily couldn't name. Then he stepped back half a step, as if he had realized he had come too close without noticing. "Rest today," he said, his voice slightly hoarser. "His voice start tomorrow." Emily entered the room that would be hers and leaned against the closed door, her heart still beating erratically. The space was simple but comfortable. A wrought iron bed, an antique wardrobe, an armchair by the window overlooking the abandoned gardens at the back of the property. She walked to the window and observed the desolate landscape outside. Twisted branches of ancient trees stretched like skeletal fingers against the grey sky, and she wondered how many secrets this place held. Later, when night fell heavily over the mansion, Emily lay on the strange bed and tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face again, the intensity of those green eyes that seemed capable of stripping much more than clothes. There was something dangerous about him, something that awakened sensations she had long tried to keep buried. Emily turned in bed, restless. At 28, she was still a virgin, not by moral or religious choice, but by pure terror. Every touch, every intimate approach she had tried over the years had triggered panic, fragmented memories of hands that shouldn't touch, of voices that whispered things a child shouldn't hear. She had built walls so high around her sexuality that sometimes she wondered if she was still capable of feeling desire. But that night, for the first time in years, her body seemed to be awakening from a long hibernation, and that terrified her more than any ghost that might inhabit those ancient walls. The first days at the Barrett estate passed in an almost sepulchral silence. Emily woke before dawn, when mist still covered the gardens like a ghostly veil, and began her cleaning routine through the endless corridors. Her steps echoed solitary on the cold marble, accompanied only by the persistent ticking of the pendulum clock in the main hall. Nathan was a constant but elusive presence. She heard him walking on the upper floor, his firm steps resonating through the old floorboards. Sometimes he came down to fetch books from the library, and Emily pretended to be absorbed in her tasks, but she felt his every movement like a disturbance in the air around her. He always wore impeccable suits, even at home, as if he were always ready for an important meeting that never came. On the third morning, as Emily was polishing the furniture in the main living room, Nathan appeared in the doorway with a cup of coffee in his hands. She hadn't heard him approach, and when she looked up and found him there, standing, watching her in silence, she almost dropped the jar of wax on the floor. "Sorry," she murmured, her cheeks involuntarily flushing. "I didn't know that you were there." "No need to stop," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Continue." There was something in the way he said it, a low and slightly husky tone, that made Emily feel as if he wasn't just referring to the cleaning. She tried to continue polishing the mahogany table, but she felt the weight of his gaze on her every movement, as if he were memorizing the way her arms moved, the curve of her back when she leaned to reach the farthest corners. "You're very quiet," Nathan observed after a few minutes. Emily stopped polishing and looked at him. "I prefer it that way. Fewer complications." "Complications," he repeated, as if he were testing the word. "Are you afraid of complications?" The question caught her off guard. It was too direct, too intimate for a conversation between employer and employee, but there was something in his eyes that prevented her from looking away. "We all are," she finally answered. Nathan took a step into the room, and Emily felt her heart race. He approached the table where she was working, placing the coffee cup on the freshly polished surface. "Some complications are worth it," he said, his voice so low that she had to lean slightly to hear. For a moment, they stood there, separated only by the width of the table, but Emily had the sensation that the space between them was charged with a dangerous electricity. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, the masculine scent mixed with the aroma of coffee. Her eyes involuntarily dropped to Nathan's hands resting on the table and noticed how large they were, strong, with long fingers that could easily... She abruptly moved away, almost tripping over her own shadow. "I have to... The kitchen needs..." she stammered, gathering the cleaning cloths with trembling hands. Nathan made no move to stop her, but she felt his eyes following her every step until she disappeared down the corridor. That afternoon, the rain returned with full force, turning the gardens into a sea of mud and making the mansion's windows tremble with the wind. Emily was in the library, reorganizing the shelves according to instructions Nathan had left in a note, when she heard footsteps on the marble staircase of the main hall. The library had direct access to the hall through a glass door, and Emily could see Nathan descending the stairs in a hurry, talking on the phone. His voice was altered, harsher than normal. "No, that's not going to happen," he was saying, running his free hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "I don't care what they're saying. The property is not for sale." Emily pretended to be focused on the books, but she couldn't help watching him discreetly. There was a tension in his posture that she hadn't noticed before, a rigidity in his shoulders that suggested he was dealing with pressures that went far beyond the simple maintenance of an isolated house. "Marcus, I already said no," Nathan continued, his voice rising. "I don't care how much they're offering. This house does not leave the family, period." He hung up the phone more forcefully than necessary and stood in the middle of the hall, hands on his hips, breathing heavily. Emily took the moment to study his profile. The square jaw, tense with annoyance, the way his shirt stretched across his chest when he took a deep breath trying to calm himself. That's when it happened. A particularly strong gust of wind caused the library door to burst open, slamming against the wall with a crash. Emily was startled, took a step back, and tripped on one of the loose rugs decorating the library floor. She completely lost her balance, the book she was holding flying through the air as she fell backward. But she didn't hit the floor. Strong arms enveloped her in the middle of her fall, pulling her against a solid chest. The impact took her breath away, not from pain, from the sudden intimacy of the contact. Nathan had held her against himself, one arm around her waist, the other supporting her back. Her face was inches from his neck, and she could feel his accelerated pulse beating just below the tanned skin. "Are you okay?" he asked, his hoarse voice very close to her ear. Emily tried to respond, but the words were lost somewhere between her mind and her throat. For the first time in years, a man's touch hadn't made her panic. On the contrary, there was something comforting, almost necessary in the way he held her, as if she belonged there. Nathan helped her straighten up slowly, but his hands remained on her waist for longer than would be strictly necessary. Emily looked up to meet his eyes, and what she saw there made her lose her breath again. Desire, pure and undisguised. It wasn't her imagination. Nathan Barrett, the man who supposedly wasn't interested in women, was looking at her like a hungry man looks at a feast. And even more disturbing, she could feel his physical reaction pressed against her hip. "Emily," he murmured, her name leaving his lips like a prayer or a curse. She abruptly moved away, her heart beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it. "Thank you," she managed to say, bending down to collect the scattered books, more to hide the blush spreading across her face than out of any real necessity. Nathan remained motionless for a moment, watching her, then abruptly turned and climbed the stairs, his footsteps echoing like thunder through the corridors of the house. That night, Emily lay in bed, unable to get the sensation of his arms around her body, the warmth of his breath against her ear, out of her mind. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, she allowed herself to think the impossible. What if all the rumors about Nathan Barrett were wrong? The following days were a delicate dance of approach and retreat. Nathan began to appear in the spaces where Emily worked with a frequency that couldn't be coincidence. Sometimes he just passed by, greeting her with a nod and a good morning that made her skin tingle. Other times he stopped to make some casual comment about the weather or about some object she was cleaning. But his words carried an intensity that transformed banal conversations into moments charged with tension. Emily began to notice small gestures from him that she couldn't ignore. On Thursday morning, she found a hot cup of tea waiting for her in the kitchen, still steaming, as if he had calculated exactly when she would come down to start work. The next day, it was a small vase with wildflowers picked from the garden, discreetly placed on the windowsill of her room. There were no notes, no explanations, but she knew they were from him. The situation became even more intense when Emily began to explore the mansion better. During a deeper cleaning of the ground floor study, she discovered that one of the walls was covered with old photographs of the Barrett family. Generations of imposing-looking men, all with the same penetrating green eyes that Nathan had inherited. But it was one photograph in particular that made her stop breathing. It was a black-and-white photo, dated 1998, showing a younger Nathan next to a young woman. She had wavy dark hair, large expressive eyes, and a delicate beauty that contrasted dramatically with his masculine intensity. But it wasn't the woman's beauty that shocked Emily. It was her face. It was as if she were looking at herself through a mirror distorted by time. The woman in the photograph could be her twin sister. With trembling hands, Emily removed the photo from the frame. On the back, a masculine handwriting had written, "Marie Emily, my heart." The date confirmed her worst fears. 1998, exactly the year of her birth. "What are you doing?" Nathan's voice behind her made her jump, almost dropping the photograph. She turned, still holding the image, and saw his expression change dramatically when he realized what she had in her hands. I was cleaning and found," she began. But the words died in her throat when she saw the pallor take over his face. Nathan crossed the study in 2 long strides and snatched the photograph from her hands. His eyes quickly went from the image to Emily's face, as if he were comparing, confirming something he already knew. "You shouldn't be messing with these things," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Who is she?" Emily asked, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "Who is Marie Emily?" The silence that followed was charged with an almost unbearable tension. Nathan put the photograph in his shirt pocket, his movements rigid and controlled. "Someone who no longer exists," he finally answered. "But she looks like me." "No, Nathan. I saw the photo. She has my face, I said no." His explosion echoed off the walls of the study, making Emily instinctively back away. But soon after, she saw regret cross his face. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have shouted." Emily felt tears burning in her eyes. It wasn't just his reaction that had hurt her, but the growing sensation that her entire life was built on lies she didn't even know existed. "My birth name is Emily Marie," she said, her voice just a whisper. "The adoption documents say my possible biological mother was named Marie Emily, and now I find a photo of a woman identical to me with the same name in this house." Nathan ran his hand over his face, a gesture of profound weariness. "Emily, you don't understand the situation that—" "Then explain it to me," she interrupted, taking a step toward him. "Tell me who this woman was. Tell me why you hired me when you saw my photo in the resume. Tell me why you look at me as if you're seeing a ghost." For a long moment they stood there, looking at each other, heavy breathing breaking the silence. Emily could see the internal battle happening behind his green eyes, the struggle between the desire to protect her and the need to protect himself. "Marie Emily worked here 28 years ago, he finally said, his voice so low that she had to get closer to hear. "She was special, different from anyone I've ever met. And you loved her." It wasn't a question, but he nodded anyway. "More than I've ever loved anyone. More than I thought it was possible to love." "What happened to her?" Nathan turned his back to Emily, walking to the window that overlooked the somber gardens. "She disappeared," he said, his voice laden with an old pain. "One morning I woke up, and she was gone. Her clothes, her belongings, everything had disappeared as if she had never existed. Why did she leave? I don't know." He turned to face her again, and Emily saw something dangerous gleaming in his eyes. "But when I received your resume, when I saw your photo and your name, I thought perhaps fate was giving me a second chance." The confession hung between them like a bomb about to explode. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. "You hired me because I look like her," she said, her voice betraying the betrayal she felt. "Not because you need a housekeeper, because I'm a young version of the woman you lost." "Emily, no!" She raised her hand, preventing him from coming closer. "Don't come near me. My God, this is sick. You're using my appearance to relive a fantasy with a dead woman." "She's not dead," said Nathan, his voice desperate. "At least I don't believe she is. And you're not just a substitute, Emily. Christ, you're more real, more alive than she ever was. You make me feel things that—" "Stop." Emily was trembling now, a mixture of anger, fear, and something deeper she didn't want to name. "Just stop. I need to think." She headed for the door, but his voice stopped her. "Emily, please, let me explain properly. There are things you need to know, things about this house, about your family. My family." She turned, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "My family abandoned me when I was hours old. I don't have a family." "You do," he said, taking a step toward her. "And Marie Emily, she didn't abandon you. Someone forced her to leave." The world seemed to be crumbling beneath Emily's feet. She ran out of the study, up the stairs to her room, and locked the door, letting herself slide to the floor as tears finally fell freely down her face. From outside, she could hear Nathan's heavy footsteps in the corridor, and then a soft knock on the door. "Emily," his voice was soft, regretful. "Please let me explain everything. You deserve to know the truth." But Emily couldn't respond. Her mind was spinning with possibilities that terrified her as much as they fascinated her. And for the first time since arriving at the Barrett estate, she wondered if she hadn't made the biggest mistake of her life. Emily spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling of her room while Nathan's words echoed in her mind. Someone forced her to leave. What did that mean? And why, despite the anger and sense of betrayal she felt, did a part of her desperately want to believe there was more to the story than appeared? When dawn finally came, painting the sky in rosy hues through the window, Emily made a decision. She needed answers, and if Nathan wasn't willing to give them voluntarily, she would find them on her own. She waited until she heard his footsteps moving away from the house. Apparently, he had gone out to resolve some business in town. Then, with her heart beating erratically, Emily climbed the stairs leading to the second floor, territory that had been expressly forbidden to her. The second-floor corridor was even more somber than the ground floor, with ancestral portraits hanging from the walls like silent sentinels. Emily walked slowly, trying not to make noise, until she found the door that was obviously the master bedroom. It was ajar, and she hesitated only a moment before pushing it fully open. Nathan's bedroom was an extension of his complex personality. The king-size bed dominated the center of the space, covered by dark silk sheets that smelled of the masculine cologne she had learned to recognize. But it was the opposite wall that made her stop breathing. It was covered entirely with paintings, all of the same woman, Marie Emily. There were dozens of them, portraits, landscapes where she appeared as an ethereal figure among the garden trees, detailed studies of her hands, her eyes, her lips. Some were unfinished, as if the artist had been interrupted in the middle of the creative process, and all were signed with the initials NB Nathan Barrett. Emily approached the canvases with a mixture of fascination and horror. The obsession was evident in every brushstroke. These weren't simply portraits of an ex-girlfriend. They were the work of a man who had lost his sanity, along with the love of his life. But there was something more disturbing. In the more recent paintings, Marie Emily's face had begun to subtly transform. The features were becoming more similar to her own. As if even in art, Nathan was mixing the two women into a single person. "You shouldn't be here." His voice at her back made her freeze. Emily turned slowly, preparing to see anger in his eyes, but found only a deep sadness. "How long have you been painting these?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nathan entered the room, closing the door behind him. "Since she left. It's the only way I found to keep her alive." "This is sick, Nathan. You realize that, don't you? You're living with ghosts." "And you," he replied, approaching her slowly. "Aren't you living with your own ghosts? You think I don't see how you shrink every time someone gets too close? How you tremble when you feel you might be losing control?" His words hit her like a punch to the stomach, mainly because they were true. "That's different," she murmured. "Is it?" Nathan stopped a few steps from her, close enough that she could see the lines of tension around his eyes. "We're both trapped by things that happened in the past. The difference is that I found a way to face my ghosts. You're still running from yours. I'm not running from anything." "No?" He took another step toward her. "Then why have you never allowed yourself to be touched by a man? Why do you hide behind this armor of indifference?" Emily felt tears burning in her eyes. "You don't know anything about me." "I know more than you imagine," he said, his voice growing softer. "I know you were abused as a child. I know the foster homes you went through weren't kind to you. I know you learned that loving is dangerous because the people who should have protected you were the same ones who hurt you." "Stop," she whispered. But there was no strength in her words. "I investigated your past before hiring you, Emily, not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I wanted to protect you. Because from the moment I saw your photo, I knew you would be important to me. Because of the resemblance to her." "At first, yes," he admitted, and the brutal honesty of the confession made her step back half a step. "But not now. Now. Christ, Emily, now it's for you. For the way you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating. For the way your eyes light up when you think no one is looking. For the strength I see in you even when you think you're weak." He came closer, and this time she didn't back away. "Marie Emily was like a dream. Beautiful, ethereal, almost unreal. But you're fire and flesh. You're real in a way she never was." "Nathan," Emily felt her resolution wavering. "Let me show you," he said, extending his hand toward her face, but stopping inches from touching her. "Let me prove that not all touches hurt, that not all men leave." For a moment that seemed eternal, they stayed like this. He with his hand extended, she trembling between desire and terror. Then, with a courage she didn't know she possessed, Emily leaned her face against his palm. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. Nathan's fingers traced the line of her cheek with a delicacy that made her close her eyes. There was no pressure, no rush, just warmth and a tenderness she had never experienced. "See?" he murmured. "It's not scary when it's the right person." Emily opened her eyes and found his, so close that she could see the golden threads mixed with the green of his irises. "How can you be sure it's me you want?" she asked. "And not just an improved version of her?" "Because," he said, bringing his face even closer to hers, "when I look at you, I don't think about the past. I think about the future. I think about what it would be like to wake up next to you every day for the next 50 years. The kiss that followed was as inevitable as gravity, light at first, almost hesitant, as if he were giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Emily didn't want to pull away. For the first time in her life, she wanted to draw closer. Her lips moved against his with growing urgency, and she felt something awakening deep in her belly, something hot and necessary that had slept through her entire adult life. Nathan's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, pressing her body against his as if she wanted to lose herself completely. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. Emily touched her own lips, surprised by the intensity of what she had felt. "This changes everything," she whispered. "I hope so," Nathan responded, his eyes shining with a promise that made her shudder with anticipation and fear at the same time. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered that there were still secrets between them, secrets that could destroy any chance of happiness they were beginning to build. The days that followed their first kiss were an emotional roller coaster for Emily. Nathan didn't try to force anything, respecting the space she needed to process what had happened between them. But the sexual tension in the air was almost palpable. Every look they exchanged carried the memory of that intimate moment. Every casual encounter in the corridors of the mansion made her heart race. Emily found herself watching him with a new and dangerous attention. The way his hands moved when he leafed through a book, the strong line of his jaw when he was concentrating, the deep timbre of his voice when he spoke on the phone. Her body was awakening to sensations she had suppressed throughout her adult life, and this terrified her as much as it excited her. It was during one of these tension-filled afternoons that Emily decided to explore a part of the house she still didn't know well, the studio. Nathan had mentioned that he painted, but seeing the space where he created those obsessive works about Marie Emily was different from merely imagining it. The studio was in the west tower of the mansion, accessible by a steep, narrow staircase. When Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, she was greeted by an explosion of natural light. Huge windows covered 3 of the 4 walls, offering a panoramic view of the wild gardens and the mountains in the distance. Easels scattered throughout the space supported canvases in different stages of completion. But they weren't just portraits of Marie Emily, as she had seen in the bedroom. There were melancholic landscapes, still lifes imbued with an almost tangible sadness, and some more recent sketches that made her stop breathing. They were of her. Emily immediately recognized her own features captured on paper: her cleaning the library, her in the garden picking flowers, her sleeping in the armchair in the main living room on a Sunday afternoon. Nathan had been watching her, memorizing her, immortalizing her on paper with a precision that bordered on devotion. "Do you like them?" His voice behind her didn't startle her this time. It was as if she knew he would come, as if the studio were a place where the secrets between them couldn't hide. "They're beautiful," she said, gently touching one of the canvases where she appeared reading in the window of her room. "But I didn't know you were watching me." "It's impossible not to watch you," Nathan admitted, coming closer. "You have a natural grace, a way of moving that's hypnotizing." Emily turned to face him. "You said the paintings of Marie Emily were the only way to keep her alive. What do these paintings of me represent?" Nathan was silent for a long moment, studying his own work with critical eyes. "Hope," he said finally. "They represent hope." Before Emily could ask what he meant by that, he went to an area of the studio that was covered by a white sheet. With deliberate movements, he pulled back the fabric, revealing a painting that made her stagger. It was her, but not exactly. It was an idealized version of Emily, naked from the waist up, with her hair loose cascading over her shoulders and an expression of ecstasy on her face. But what was most disturbing wasn't the nudity or the sensuality of the image. It was the fact that he had painted something she had never experienced. The pleasure portrayed on her face was something she had never felt, but which he had imagined in too intimate detail. "My God," she whispered, feeling her face burn. "Nathan, this is obsessive? Inappropriate? Invasive?" He laughed, But there was no humor in the laugh. "I know what it is, Emily, but I couldn't stop. Every night I came here and painted you as I imagine you would be if you let someone truly touch you." Emily couldn't look away from the painting. There was something both disturbing and seductive about the way he had captured not just her body, but a version of herself she had never known. "You have fantasies about me," she said, not a question. "Every day," he admitted without hesitation. "I imagine what it would be like to awaken you slowly, what the sound of your breathing changing would be like when I touched every inch of your skin. I imagine what it would be like to be the first man to make you feel real pleasure." His words sent waves of heat through Emily's body. She turned to face him and saw that his eyes were dark with desire. "And what if you're wrong?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "What if I can never feel these things? What if my traumas are too strong?" Nathan approached her slowly, as if he were approaching a wounded animal. "Then we'll go slowly," he said. "As slowly as you need. There's no rush, Emily. We have the rest of our lives." "You can't be sure of that," she protested. "You barely know me. How can you talk about the rest of our lives when I still don't even know who I really am?" "I can help you discover that," he offered. "I know things about your past that you don't. Things about Marie Emily, about why she really left." Emily felt her heart quicken. "What do you mean?" Nathan hesitated, as if measuring his words. "Marie Emily didn't leave because she wanted to," he finally said. "She was threatened, forced to disappear to protect you. To protect me, but that doesn't make sense. I was just a baby." "You were her daughter," said Nathan, coming closer. "And there were people who would do anything to ensure that information never came to light." "What people? What are you talking about?" Before Nathan could answer, a sound interrupted them. The unmistakable noise of a car coming up the gravel road that led to the mansion. They looked at each other, both knowing they weren't expecting visitors. Nathan ran to one of the windows and looked down. Emily saw his expression change, a dangerous tension taking over his features. "Who is it?" she asked. "Someone I hoped never to see again," he said, his voice laden with barely contained anger. "Go down to your room. Don't come out until I come for you." "Nathan, you're scaring me. Who is this person?" He turned to her, and Emily saw something she had never seen in his eyes before. Fear. "It's the man who made Marie Emily disappear," he said. "And if he discovers you're here, that you're her daughter, Emily, you can't let him see you. Promise me this." Emily nodded, terror growing in her chest. She ran down the stairs, but she didn't go straight to her room. Instead, she hid behind one of the heavy curtains in the main living room, where she could hear what would happen in the entrance hall. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. Emily heard Nathan's firm footsteps crossing the marble, then the sound of the door opening. "Marcus," Nathan's voice was ice cold. "What an unpleasant surprise." "Nathan?" The visitor's voice was smooth, almost cordial, but there was something sinister beneath the politeness. "You look terrible, cousin. Solitude isn't doing you any good." "Cousin." Emily felt her stomach turn. Whoever this Marcus was, he was family. And by Nathan's reaction, dangerous family. "What do you want?" asked Nathan. "May I come in? We have much to talk about." Emily shrank behind the curtain when she heard footsteps approaching the room where she was hiding. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure they could hear it. And then Marcus's voice echoed dangerously close. "Still decorating with ghosts of the past, I see, but I was told you hired a new employee recently. Where is she? I'd like to meet her." Emily held her breath behind the heavy curtain, every muscle in her body tense as she listened to the conversation in the hall. Marcus's voice had an oily tone that made her feel nauseated, as if there was something fundamentally wrong with the man. "The employee is in town," Nathan lied, with a coldness Emily had never heard before. "Shopping. She shouldn't be back until late." "What a shame," said Marcus, and Emily could hear the fake smile in his voice. "From what I heard, she's remarkably similar to someone we know, someone from the past." There was a tense silence, and Emily imagined Nathan struggling to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do, dear cousin. Marie Emily. The little girl who caused so much trouble years ago. I heard your new employee has a disturbing resemblance to her." "You're delusional." Marcus laughed, a humorless sound that made Emily's skin crawl. "Am I? Or have you finally decided to stop living in the past and found a suitable replacement? I always knew you were obsessed, Nathan, but this is a new level of pathology." Emily heard footsteps approaching the room where she was hiding. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure the whole house could hear it. "Marcus," Nathan's voice was loaded with warning. "You're not welcome here. I suggest you leave before I do something we'll both regret." "Always so dramatic," Marcus laughed again. "But I didn't come here for empty threats. I came with a business proposal. The family is worried about you, Nathan. Living alone in this old house obsessed with ghosts, it's not healthy. Get to the point. We want to buy your share of the inheritance, a generous price, enough for you to start a new life away from here, away from complicated memories. I've already said this house is not for sale." "Ah, but circumstances have changed, haven't they?" Marcus's voice grew lower, more threatening. "Especially now that you've brought her back." Emily felt her blood freeze in her veins. Marcus knew. Somehow he knew who she was. "I haven't brought anyone back." "Don't be ridiculous, Nathan. You think I don't have eyes in town? That I don't know when a woman with Marie Emily's face appears looking for work? When you, who haven't hired anyone in years, suddenly decide you need a housekeeper?" Emily heard footsteps moving through the hall, approaching dangerously close to the room. She shrank even further behind the curtain, praying that Marcus wouldn't decide to explore the house. "Where is she, Nathan? Where have you hidden her daughter?" The question fell like a bomb in the silence. Emily felt the world spin around her. Marcus knew. He knew she was Marie Emily's daughter, which meant he had known all along. For 28 years, he had known. "You're delusional," Nathan repeated, but his voice had lost some of its strength. "Am I? Then you won't mind if I take a look around the house. To satisfy my curiosity, you understand. You're not going to set foot even one more inch inside this property." Emily heard a sound that froze her to the bone, the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. "Actually," said Marcus, his voice now completely stripped of its false courtesy, "I think I will." There was a moment of tense silence. Then Nathan spoke, his voice controlled but loaded with a dangerous fury. "What do you want, Marcus? What do you really want?" "I want history not to repeat itself," said Marcus. "Marie Emily was a mistake that cost the family dearly. I won't allow you to make the same mistake again." "What mistake? Loving a woman?" "Loving the wrong woman, a woman who didn't belong in our world, who asked too many questions, who knew too much." Emily felt tears burning her eyes. Her mother. They were talking about her mother. Marie Emily never harmed anyone. Marie Emily was a threat. She had discovered things about the family business that could destroy us. And when she got pregnant, when she started talking about telling everything to the child when she grew up, you killed her. It wasn't a question. Emily had to cover her mouth to keep from screaming. Her mother was dead. She had been murdered by this man, by this family. "I protected our family," said Marcus coldly, "as I always have, as I always will. And now you want to do the same thing to Emily." "Emily?" Marcus laughed. "Ah, so that's what she's called now. Appropriate. Marie Emily left her mark on the world after all." Emily heard footsteps approaching the room again. Her entire body was trembling with fear and anger. This man had killed her mother, and now wanted to kill her too. "She doesn't know anything," Nathan said desperately. "She didn't even know that Marie Emily existed until a few days ago. She's not a threat." "Not yet. But she will be. Blood doesn't lie, Nathan. She'll start asking questions, just like her mother did. And when that happens, I won't let you touch her. You don't have a choice. Unless," Marcus made a calculated pause, "unless you're smart this time. You send her away today. You make her disappear forever, and I'll pretend I never saw her. And why would you do that? Because, contrary to what you think, I don't like killing. It's inconvenient. But if she stays, if she starts discovering truths she shouldn't discover, I'll have no choice." Emily felt bile rise in her throat. They were negotiating her life as if she were a commodity. "You have 24 hours, continued Marcus. "Make her disappear or I'll do it for you. And next time it won't be as clean as it was with Marie Emily." Emily heard footsteps moving away, then the front door closing with a dull thud. She waited a few minutes in total silence before emerging from behind the curtain, her legs trembling so violently that she could barely stand. Nathan was in the middle of the hall, his hands shaking as he put away a revolver in the holster he wore hidden under his shirt. When he saw Emily, his face paled. "You heard everything." Emily nodded, unable to speak. Tears were flowing freely down her face. "Emily, He killed my mother. Her voice came out as a strangled whisper. He killed my mother, and now he wants to kill me too. Nathan crossed the hall in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. Emily didn't resist, collapsing against his chest as she sobbed. I won't let that happen, he murmured against her hair. I swear by everything sacred I won't let him touch you. How can you protect me? Emily moved away to look at him. He has a gun. He's your family. He has power, influence. And I have something he doesn't have. What? Nathan held her face between his hands, his green eyes shining with a fierce determination. I have love. True, desperate, obsessive love for you. And a man in love is much more dangerous than a man with power. Emily felt something change inside her at that moment. The fear was still there, but there was something more. A strength she didn't know she possessed, a righteous anger that burned in her chest. I won't run, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. I won't let him drive me away from the only good thing that's ever happened in my life. Emily, no. She moved away from him, straightening her shoulders. He killed my mother because she discovered secrets about your family. What secrets are those, Nathan? What does your family do that's so terrible? Nathan closed his eyes as if he were fighting against physical pain. Are you sure you want to know? Because once I tell you, there's no going back. Emily thought of the mother she never knew, of the woman who had been killed for asking too many questions. She thought of all the lies she had lived, all the years spent not knowing who she really was. Tell me everything. Nathan led Emily to the library, locking the door behind them before heading to a specific bookshelf. With precise movements, he removed several books, revealing a hidden compartment from which he retrieved an old leather folder and yellowed documents weathered by time. The Barrett family didn't build its wealth through legitimate business, he began, his voice heavy with the weight of generations of secrets. For over a century, we were intermediaries, facilitators for people who needed services that couldn't be obtained through conventional channels. Emily sat in the leather armchair near the fireplace, trying to process what she was hearing. What kind of services? Forged documents, new identities, escape routes for people who needed to disappear. In the beginning, we helped war refugees, people persecuted by political regimes. It was almost noble, in a way. Nathan opened the folder, revealing old photographs and documents in different languages. But over time, our clients began to change. He showed her a family photograph from the 1940s, where men in suits posed alongside others who were clearly foreigners. We started helping Nazi war criminals escape to South America. Then came the drug traffickers, the hired killers, corrupt politicians fleeing justice, anyone who could pay our price. Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. And you? Were you also involved in this? Until I met Marie-Emily, yes. Nathan closed his eyes as if the confession was painful. I was born into this life, Emily. It was all I knew until my early 20s. I thought it was normal, that it was just family business. What changed? She changed everything. Nathan took a photograph of Marie-Emily from the folder, the same one Emily had found in the study. She came to work here as a housekeeper, just like you. She was young, innocent, full of life. And for the first time in my existence, I truly fell in love. Emily studied the photograph of her mother, trying to find similarities beyond the physical. There was a sweetness in her eyes, a purity that contrasted dramatically with the dark world in which she had become involved. How did she discover the family business? By accident. One night, an unexpected package arrived. A man who had killed an entire family in Chicago and urgently needed a new identity. Marcus hadn't warned me, and Marie-Emily was awake, organizing the library when he arrived. Nathan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the somber gardens. She heard the entire conversation. She learned we were providing false documents for a murderer, that we were going to help him escape justice. She was horrified, as any decent person would be. And she threatened to expose you. Not initially. She came to me first, said she loved me but couldn't live with it. She asked me to leave the family business to start a new life away from here. Emily felt her heart tighten. She could imagine her mother, young and in love, trying to save the man she loved. And you? What did you say? That I would try, that I would talk to Marcus, that I would find a way for us to free ourselves from this life. Nathan laughed bitterly. I was too naive to realize that Marcus would never allow that. What happened? Marcus discovered that Marie-Emily knew the truth, and when he found out she was pregnant, Nathan turned to Emily, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He saw a double threat, a woman who knew our secrets, and a baby who might one day inherit not just our money, but also our knowledge. Emily stood from the armchair, walking toward him. How did he kill her? He pretended she had a choice, said that if she left, disappeared forever and never tried to make contact again, he would let her live. Said he would arrange a good family to adopt you when you were born, that he would ensure you had a normal life, but it was a lie. Yes, Marie-Emily believed him. She packed her bag, said goodbye to me through a letter that I only found after she had gone. She said she was doing it to protect us, to protect you. Nathan took a yellowed letter from the folder, offering it to Emily. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper and immediately recognized her own handwriting, as if it had been written by herself decades ago. My dearest Nathan, Emily read aloud, her voice choked. When you read this letter, I will already be gone, not because I don't love you, but because I love you too much to allow our love to destroy you. Marcus has made me understand that my presence here puts all of us in danger, you, me, and our daughter, who is yet to be born. Emily had to stop reading, tears blurring her vision. Continue, Nathan gently urged. He promised that if I leave, he will find a good family for our daughter, a family that can give her everything we cannot, safety, normalcy, a future without the shadows of your family's past. I want to believe he's telling the truth, that there is enough goodness in him to honor this promise. Emily folded the letter, unable to continue. Marcus waited until she gave birth. Nathan continued, when it became clear that Emily couldn't proceed. He arranged the adoption as promised, but 3 days after you were delivered to your first adoptive parents, he killed her, made it look like a car accident, an isolated road, a dangerous curve on a rainy night. The body was found 2 days later. Emily felt her legs give way. Nathan caught her before she fell, pulling her into his arms. Why didn't you do anything? She whispered against his chest. Why didn't you save her? Because I didn't know. Nathan's voice was laden with self-recrimination. Marcus told me she had decided to start over in another state, that she didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I believed him because it was easier to believe than to face the truth. When did you find out? Years later. By chance, I saw an old newspaper report about her accident. I recognized the name, the description. That's when I realized Marcus had lied to me too. Emily moved away from him, pacing the library like a caged animal. And you never tried to find me, never wondered what had happened to me. Every day for the last 20 years, Nathan admitted, but Marcus controlled all the information. He said you had been adopted by a family abroad, that it was better if I didn't know details. He said it would be dangerous for you if I tried to make contact. Then how, 3 years ago, I hired a private investigator, without Marcus knowing. It took time, but he managed to track your history through the different foster homes. When I learned you were looking for work, Nathan approached her again. I had to try. I had to meet the daughter of the woman I loved, more than my own life. Emily turned to face him, her eyes shining with a mixture of anger and pain. And now? Marcus knows I'm here. Knows who I am. He gave me 24 hours to disappear or we leave together, interrupted Nathan. Tonight. I have money set aside, contacts who can help us. We can start a new life away from here. Run, said Emily bitterly, just like my mother tried to do. It's different this time. This time we'll be together. This time I know who the enemy is. Emily shook her head, a fierce resolution forming in her eyes. No, I won't run. My mother ran and died alone and afraid. I won't make the same mistake. Emily, you don't understand. Marcus has resources, connections. He can make anything look like an accident. Then we have to be smarter than him. Emily approached Nathan, taking his hands. You said you have contacts, people who owe favors to the family. Use them. How? We're going to expose him. We'll gather evidence of all the crimes your family has committed over the years and deliver it to the FBI. If Marcus wants a war, we'll give him a war. Nathan studied her face, seeing a determination that painfully reminded him of Marie-Emily. This is extremely dangerous, Emily. If he discovers what we're planning before we can expose him, then we won't let him discover it. Emily moved closer, pressing her body against his. Nathan, my mother died to keep me safe. I'm not going to waste her sacrifice living in fear for the rest of my life. For the first time since Marcus had left, Nathan smiled. You really are her daughter. The same courage, the same stubbornness, the same capacity to love, added Emily, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't just desire or passion, but a promise, an alliance. They would face Marcus together, and either win together or die together. The next few hours passed in a race against time. Nathan and Emily worked side by side in the study, gathering decades of evidence that would incriminate Marcus and the entire criminal network of the Barrett family. Forged documents, compromising photographs, banking records proving money laundering, everything was meticulously archived. Marcus had always been too arrogant to destroy evidence he considered secure. He was always methodical, explained Nathan as he photographed pages from an accounting book that detailed illegal transactions from the last 15 years. He documented everything, thinking he would never be discovered. That arrogance will be his downfall. Emily organized the documents in piles, scanning everything into a laptop that Nathan had retrieved from a hidden safe. Her hands worked quickly, but her heart beat erratically. With each passing hour, they were getting closer to the 24-hour deadline Marcus had given. We have enough evidence to arrest half the political elite of the country, murmured Emily, looking at a photograph where Marcus appeared next to a well-known senator, receiving an envelope of money. How did they manage to operate like this for so long? Systematic corruption, Nathan answered bitterly. When you have judges, prosecutors, and politicians on your payroll, you can do anything. But it also means we need to be very careful about who we deliver this information to. Emily stopped typing and looked at him. Do you have someone in mind? I have a contact in the FBI, an honest agent who's tried to investigate our family before, but never had enough evidence. If we deliver everything to him, the sound of a distant explosion made them both freeze. The entire house shook, and pieces of plaster fell from the ceiling. Emily grabbed Nathan's arm, terror stamped on her face. What was that? Nathan ran to the window and looked outside. In the backyard, orange flames rose to the night sky. The shed where they kept the generators and maintenance equipment was on fire. Marcus, he said, his voice icy. He decided not to wait until tomorrow. As if having heard the name, the house phone began to ring. Nathan answered on the third ring, activating the speakerphone so Emily could hear. Beautiful fireworks, don't you think? Marcus's voice sounded amused, as if he were playing with children. I hope you enjoyed them, because it's just the beginning. What do you want, Marcus? For both of you to leave the house. Now, walk to the main gate with your hands visible and no electronic devices. You have 5 minutes. Emily vigorously shook her head, but Nathan ignored her. And if we do that, what guarantees do we have that you won't kill us as soon as we come out? None, Marcus admitted cheerfully. But if you don't come out, I'm going to blow up the entire house with you inside, and it will be much less elegant than I had originally planned. The call was cut. Nathan turned to Emily, who was already saving all the scanned files on a USB drive. We need to get out, he said. At least that way we'll have a chance. Not without the evidence. Emily yanked the USB drive from the computer and handed it to Nathan. If we die, at least someone might find this and bring justice. Nathan took the USB drive, but instead of pocketing it, he extended it back to her. You keep it. If something happens to me, you still have a chance to escape. We're going to get out of this together, Emily said firmly, but she tucked the USB drive into her bra, the safest place she could think of. They left the study and walked slowly toward the front door. Nathan carried the revolver, but they both knew it would be useless against whatever Marcus had probably prepared for them. When they opened the main door, they were greeted by a frightening spectacle. The front garden was illuminated by powerful floodlights, like a movie set. Marcus was standing near the gate, accompanied by 2 men armed with rifles. He wore an immaculate suit, as if he were attending a social event, not a murder. Punctuality has always been a quality of the Barrett family, said Marcus as they approached. I admire that. Let Emily go, said Nathan when they stopped at a safe distance. She has nothing to do with this. Marcus laughed, a genuinely amused sound. Oh, Nathan, after everything we discussed this morning, you still don't understand. She has everything to do with this. She is the center of all this. He walked around them like a predator studying its prey. 28 years ago, I made a mistake. I allowed feelings, sympathy, perhaps even a trace of conscience to interfere with my judgment. I promised Marie-Emily that I would give the baby a good life, and I kept my word. I found decent adoptive parents, ensured she was well cared for. Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. You promised that so my mother could die in peace. Exactly. Marcus smiled as if he were praising a brilliant student. She died happy, thinking she had saved her daughter. And for 20 years that worked perfectly. You were safe, away from us, living a normal life. Then why didn't you leave me in peace? Because you didn't stay in your place, said Marcus, his voice hardening. At 18, you started looking for information about your biological family. At 25, you hired a private investigator, and now you're here at the heart of everything, asking exactly the same questions your mother asked. Emily took a step forward, defying the rifles pointed at her. And you're afraid of the answers. I'm afraid of the destruction those answers might cause, corrected Marcus. Our family has built an empire over generations. Hundreds of people depend on us directly or indirectly. I won't allow everything to be destroyed because of a sentimental curiosity. Hundreds of people, repeated Emily with disdain. You mean hundreds of criminals? I mean hundreds of families who have food on the table because we offer services that others cannot. Judges who can retire their children with dignity. Politicians who can pay for the best medical treatments for their wives. Businessmen who can expand their businesses without worrying about legal obstacles. Marcus stopped in front of them, his eyes shining with a fanatical conviction. You think you're heroes, but you're really just inconveniences, stones in the path of something greater than you can comprehend. Nathan stepped in front of Emily, shielding her with his own body. If that's what you think, then finish this now. Oh, I will, promised Marcus. But first, I want you to see something interesting. He signaled to one of the armed men who brought a black backpack. Marcus unzipped it, revealing enough explosives to devastate the entire property. The Barrett estate will collapse tonight, he announced cheerfully. A tragic accident, gas leak perhaps, or a short circuit in the old wiring. You two will die like romantic heroes, embracing among the rubble. Emily felt Nathan tense beside her. She knew he was calculating the chances of disarming Marcus or his henchmen, but the odds were minimal. Unless... Marcus made a dramatic pause. Unless what? Asked Nathan. Unless Miss Emily accepts an alternative proposal. Marcus turned to her, his eyes shining with a malice that made her shudder. You come with me, voluntarily, without resistance, and I let Nathan live. No, said Nathan immediately. That's not even an option. Actually, it's the only option, corrected Marcus. Emily, you can save the life of the man you love. All you need to do is walk in my direction. Emily looked at Nathan, seeing the desperation in his eyes. She knew that if she accepted Marcus's proposal, she would die anyway. But perhaps she could give Nathan a chance to escape, to deliver the evidence to the authorities. If I go with you, she said slowly, you promise to let him live. Emily, no. Nathan grabbed her arm. Don't believe him. I promise, said Marcus solemnly. Word of honor of the Barrett family. Emily looked into Nathan's eyes one last time, trying to memorize every detail of his face. Then, before he could stop her, she took a step toward Marcus. That's when everything exploded into chaos. The first shot came from somewhere in the shadows beyond the floodlights, hitting one of Marcus's armed men in the shoulder. The rifle flew from his hands as he screamed in pain. Nathan didn't waste time. He pulled Emily down and rolled with her behind Marcus's car, using the vehicle as protection. FBI, drop your weapons! The voice echoed through loudspeakers, coming from several directions at once. Marcus roared with rage, pulling a pistol from his vest while shouting orders to his remaining man. Impossible. How did they know? Emily and Nathan looked at each other behind the car. Neither had called the police. They had barely had time to gather the evidence, let alone deliver it to the authorities. Nathan Barrett! The amplified voice sounded again. We know you're there. Stay down and await our instructions. They know your name, whispered Emily, confused. How do they know you're here? Before Nathan could answer, Marcus appeared on the other side of the car, his gun pointed directly at Emily's head. Get up, darling, he said, his voice dangerously calm despite the chaos around them. You're going to be my ticket out of here. Nathan tried to move, but Marcus redirected the gun at him. Don't be stupid, cousin. One move and I kill you both right here. Emily rose slowly, hands in the air. Her heart was beating so hard she could hear it in her ears, but her mind was strangely clear. The USB drive with the evidence was still hidden in her bra. As long as she was alive, there was still hope. Marcus pulled her against him, using her as a human shield as he backed toward the gardens at the rear of the property. Nathan followed them at a safe distance, his hands also raised. "Marcus!" The agent's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Release the hostage and surrender. The property is surrounded." "Go to hell!" Marcus shouted back, continuing to drag Emily away from the floodlights. "You don't know who you're messing with." They entered the dense woods that surrounded the property, branches scratching Emily's face as Marcus forced her to walk faster and faster. Behind them, she could hear Nathan following, but she knew he couldn't do anything while Marcus kept the gun to her head. "How did the FBI find out?" asked Emily, trying to buy time. "Someone must have tipped them off," said Marcus, his breathing heavy from the effort of traversing the dense woods. "But it doesn't matter. I have escape routes they'll never find." They reached a small clearing where Marcus had hidden a motorcycle. It was a clever plan, a vehicle that could pass through trails that cars couldn't traverse. "Get on," ordered Marcus, pushing Emily toward the bike. "I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. You're not going to drive, you're just going to hold on tight and hope I don't decide you're more troublesome alive than dead." Nathan emerged from the woods at that moment, his face pale in the moonlight. "Marcus, please let her stay, take me instead." Marcus laughed, a humorless sound. "You? You have no value as a hostage, Nathan. Everyone knows you're just a ghost living in a haunted house. Emily, on the other hand, Emily has potential. She can be useful in various ways." The tone in his voice when he said this made Emily shiver. She understood that his intentions went far beyond just using her as a human shield. "I'd rather die," she said firmly. "That can be arranged," replied Marcus, pressing the gun barrel against her temple. "But first, let's go for a ride." That's when Emily made the bravest decision of her life. Instead of getting on the motorcycle, she threw herself to the side, rolling on the ground and shouting to Nathan, "The USB drive in my bra." Marcus fired, but Emily was already moving. The bullet grazed her arm, leaving a line of burning fire, but it didn't stop her. Nathan launched himself at Marcus, and the two men began fighting for the gun. Emily rolled behind a tree, quickly removing the USB drive from its hiding place and throwing it away, in the direction from which the sounds of the FBI had come. It didn't matter if they managed to find it. At least it wouldn't be destroyed if Marcus killed her. The fight between the two men was fierce. Marcus was younger and more desperate, but Nathan fought with the strength of someone who had nothing more to lose. The gun fired again and Emily screamed, but she couldn't see who had been hit. Then suddenly the woods filled with flashlight beams and shouts of FBI. Armed officers emerged from the trees, quickly surrounding the clearing. Marcus, seeing that he was cornered, picked up the gun from the ground where it had fallen during the fight and pointed it directly at Emily. "If you come any closer, I'll kill the girl." "Don't do that, Marcus," said a familiar voice. The agent emerged from the shadows, also armed, but with his gun lowered. "We already have enough evidence to arrest you and your entire network. Don't make your situation worse." "What evidence?" Marcus laughed, but Emily could hear the desperation behind the bravado. "You have nothing." "We do," said the agent calmly. "We have 20 years of investigation, Marcus. Photographs, documents, financial records, witnesses who finally agreed to speak after they learned you were losing control." Emily looked at Nathan, who was leaning against a tree, pressing his hand against a wound in his chest. Their eyes met across the clearing, and she saw something that made her understand. He had planned it all. "You called them," she said. Not a question. Nathan nodded weakly. "Last night, after Marcus left, I knew we wouldn't have a chance alone." "Traitor!" Marcus shouted, redirecting the gun at Nathan. "You betrayed your own family." "You killed Marie Emily," said Nathan, his voice strong despite the pain. "You destroyed my family 28 years ago." "I protected our family." "You protected your dirty business," corrected Nathan, "and now you're going to pay for it." Marcus looked around, seeing that he was completely surrounded. Federal agents were watching him from all directions, waiting for just an opportunity to shoot without hitting the hostages. For a moment that seemed eternal. No one moved. The silence in the woods was almost oppressive, broken only by Marcus's heavy breathing and the distant sound of sirens approaching. Then Marcus made his final desperate move. Instead of shooting Emily or Nathan, He turned the gun on himself. "If I can't have control," he said, his voice strangely calm, "then no one can." "No," Emily shouted, but it was too late. The shot echoed through the woods like thunder. Marcus fell backward, his glazed eyes looking at the stars through the treetops. Emily ran to Nathan, who was sliding down the tree where he had been leaning. The wound in his chest was bleeding profusely, staining his shirt dark red. "Paramedics!" one of the officers shouted into the radio. "We need paramedics here now." "Hey," whispered Nathan when Emily knelt beside him, pressing her hands against the wound to try to stop the bleeding. "It's okay. It's over." "Don't talk," she said, tears running down her face. "Save your strength. The ambulance is coming." "Emily," he weakly held her hand. "I love you. Not like I loved Marie Emily. This is different. This is complete." "I love you too," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "And you're going to be fine. We're going to be fine." When the paramedics arrived and took Nathan away, Emily remained in the clearing for a few more minutes, looking at Marcus's body. The man who had destroyed so many lives, who had killed her mother and almost killed her and Nathan, had finally paid for his crimes. But somehow it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a very long nightmare and the uncertain beginning of something new. 6 months later, Emily was in the garden of the Barrett estate. But everything was different. The rusted fences had been replaced by a low fence of light wood. The gardens, which were once wild and haunted, now bloomed with vibrant colors: red roses, golden sunflowers, lavender that perfumed the morning air. The house itself had been renovated, maintaining its classic elegance while removing the somber feeling that had haunted it for decades. Nathan had recovered from surgery, though he still carried a scar on his chest that Emily kissed every morning as a reminder that they had survived. The doctors said he had been lucky. The bullet had passed millimeters away from his heart. The FBI investigation had been even more comprehensive than they had imagined. The USB drive that Emily had thrown into the woods was found and became just a small part of a dossier that would take years to be fully processed. Dozens of politicians, judges, and businessmen were arrested. The corruption network that the Barrett family had built over a century collapsed like a house of cards. Nathan cooperated fully with the authorities, turning over everything he knew about the family's illegal business. In exchange, he received immunity. The agent recognized that he had been both victim and accomplice, and that his cooperation had been essential to dismantling the entire criminal operation. "Thinking about what?" Nathan's voice behind her pulled her from her reverie. Emily turned and smiled, seeing him approach with 2 cups of coffee. He wore jeans and a light blue button-down shirt, casual clothes she had insisted he buy to replace the formal suits he wore as emotional armor. "About how everything has changed," she answered, accepting the cup and inhaling the rich aroma. "A year ago I was an invisible woman, afraid of my own shadow. Now you're the bravest woman I've ever known," Nathan completed, sitting beside her on the garden bench they had installed under the magnolia tree. "The woman who faced a killer to protect the man she loves." Emily nestled against his shoulder, feeling the comforting solidity of his body. They had spent the last few months not only rebuilding the house and gardens, but rebuilding themselves. For Emily, this meant intensive therapy to deal with the childhood traumas that had shaped her intimate fears. For Nathan, it meant learning to live without the guilt he had carried for decades over Marie Emily's death. "Sometimes I still dream about her," Emily said softly. "About my mother. But now the dreams are different. She's not screaming for help. She's at peace." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "She is. We finally have justice for her." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching butterflies dance among the flowers. Emily thought about the last few months, about how her relationship with Nathan had evolved. In the hospital, while he recovered, they had talked about everything. About Marie Emily, about Emily's fears, about the future they wanted to build together. Physical intimacy had come gradually, at her pace. Nathan never pressured, never demanded more than she was ready to give. The first time they made love was 3 months after the incident in the woods, on a rainy night when Emily finally felt safe enough to give herself completely. It was different from anything she had imagined, not just physical, but emotional, almost spiritual, as if 2 wounded souls had finally found healing in each other. "Emily," Nathan's voice brought her back to the present. There was a nervousness in it that immediately caught her attention. What is it? He stood from the bench and, to her complete surprise, knelt on the grass before her. From his shirt pocket, he took out a small navy blue velvet box. Nathan? Emily felt her heart quicken. I know we're still rebuilding, he said, his hands slightly trembling as he opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning diamond ring. I know we had a complicated beginning, full of secrets and pain. But Emily, you saved me. Not just from loneliness, but from myself. You gave me a reason to want to be a better man. Tears began to run down Emily's face, but they were tears of pure happiness. I can't promise that our life will be perfect, Nathan continued. I can't erase our past or guarantee that we won't have more challenges. But I can promise that I will love you with every breath I take, that I will protect you with my life, that I will spend each day trying to deserve the incredible gift you gave me by letting me love you. He took the ring from the box, his hands now steady. Emily Marie, daughter of Marie Emily, strongest and bravest woman I've ever known, will you marry me? Emily slid from the bench to kneel on the grass before him, holding his face between her hands. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, as if it had been made specifically for her. They kissed there in the garden under the morning sun, surrounded by the flowers they had planted together. Symbols of growth, of renewal, of life being born from destruction. There's one more thing, said Nathan when they separated, both still kneeling on the grass. Emily laughed through her tears. More? I don't know if my heart can handle more surprises. You'll like this one. He stood and helped her to her feet, then led her to the veranda of the house, where there was a pile of papers on the small wicker table. What is this? The final documents for the foundation we're creating, explained Nathan. The Marie Emily Foundation, to help young people who've left the foster care system find their biological families and receive psychological and educational support. Emily picked up the papers with trembling hands. Everything was detailed there. A foundation that would use part of the Barrett family fortune, now cleansed of criminal connections, to do the good that had never been done before. Nathan, it's perfect. I thought we could make this house the headquarters. Instead of being a place of secrets and pain, it would be a place of hope and healing. Emily kissed him again, savoring the salty taste of her own tears of happiness. My mother would be proud, she whispered against his lips. She would be, Nathan agreed. And wherever she is, I'm sure she's smiling. They spent the rest of the morning planning the wedding. It would be simple, just close family and a few friends, held right there in the renovated gardens. Emily insisted she wanted to wear the wedding dress she had found among Marie Emily's belongings, carefully preserved in a box in the studio. It was as if her mother could finally be present on the most important day of her life. In the afternoon, while Nathan was in town resolving some legal details of the foundation, Emily went up to the studio. The obsessive paintings of Marie Emily had been carefully removed and donated to a museum that was mounting an exhibition on art and trauma. In their place, Nathan had hung new portraits, of her, of them together, landscapes of the renovated gardens, art that celebrated the present instead of clinging to the past. But there was one painting he kept, the unfinished portrait of Marie Emily that Emily had found that first day. Now it was framed and hung in a place of honor, not as an obsession but as a memorial, a way to keep the memory of a brave woman who had sacrificed everything to protect her daughter. Emily gently touched the frame of the painting. Thank you, Mother, she whispered, for protecting me, for giving me life, for giving me the strength to find true love. A gentle breeze came through the open window, making the curtains dance as if in response. Emily smiled, feeling a peace she had never experienced before. She had found her family, not just in Nathan, but in herself. She had discovered who she was, where she came from, and more importantly, where she was going. When Nathan returned from town that night, he found Emily cooking dinner in the renovated kitchen, humming a song he didn't recognize. She wore a simple sunflower yellow dress that highlighted her skin, tanned from the time spent working in the garden. How was town? She asked, turning to kiss him when he entered the kitchen. Productive. The foundation documents were approved. We can start operations next month. He hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. And you? How did you spend the day? Planning our life, she answered, turning in his arms. Our beautiful, complicated, imperfect, but completely our own life. Our life, repeated Nathan, kissing her softly. I like the sound of that. That night they made love with a passion tempered by tenderness, by the certainty that they had finally found not just each other, but themselves. And for the first time since arriving at the Barrett estate, Emily fell asleep without fear of the future. Outside, the night wind whispered through the renovated gardens, carrying with it not the ghosts of the past, but the promises of tomorrow. The mansion that had once housed deadly secrets now pulsed with life and love, a testament that even the darkest stories can have luminous endings when two brave souls decide to rewrite destiny together.